Hello, everybody, and welcome back to 001 Radio Gamescast. Tonight, as always, I'm your host, Ryan, and I'm joined today by the lovely Alex. Alex, this is where you say hello.
I thought I said hello. Hi.
Oh my gosh.
Again. Oh no. Is my mic picking
No,
up stuff?
You're good. As always, you can see the production value on presentation here, and the other lovely guest we have is Wyatt.
I always try and play the theme song in my head to try and match up exactly when you're gonna introduce yourself, and I got it exactly right this time, and I'm very proud of myself.
You have to get used to the fact that it has about a second of slow build up before it starts.
That was that was what I did this time, and I was like, oh wait, I always forget that bit, and then it just went over so beautifully.
Okay, so tonight we got a nice mostly calming show. We've got 3 people. We're just gonna chill and talk about some video games. We're going to be going through, we have a lot of news this week, so we'll be covering all of that and probably talking a little bit at length of some major stuff. And then, if we have more time, we're just going to go into what we've been doing with lately and what games we've been enjoying in the past month. So, to get started, as always, we have an award to give out. And today's award is the most expensive games console, the 001 Radio Gamescast most expensive games console past the SNES adjusted for inflation. It's a long award, but it's pretty easy. So I'm gonna have you guys take a guess at what console past the SNES. Actually, we're gonna go past the PlayStation because I think most of us weren't huge gamers in the SNES era. So we're gonna skip over that era because there is one outlier, the Neo Geo being $1,000 that I think is a little hard to account for. So we're gonna go with the more familiar stuff. We're gonna go PlayStation onwards. What is the most expensive games console adjusted for inflation? I'm gonna say you get 2 guesses.
After the PlayStation 1?
Give me your top 2. Yeah, after the PlayStation 1. So that includes stuff like the Xbox One, the PlayStation 3, the Dreamcast, the Nintendo 64.
And expensive in terms of purchasing for the consumer, not to develop.
Yeah. So this is a consumer price adjusted for inflation. So this is the most expensive relative to when it came out.
PlayStation 3 is my first guess.
PlayStation 3 is your first guess? All right. How about you, what?
I'm gonna go pretty obscure on you. Bandai Apple Pippin.
I can tell you right now that's not on this list. I'm considering home consoles.
It is, technically speaking.
Okay, I've got to look up a picture of this thing now to see if I've.
I'm sorry, am I too smart for your game?
What did you call it? A Pippin?
It's a Bandai Apple Pippin. It was this failed console. Yeah, it was a failed collaboration between Bandai and Apple to release
I think this PC most likely would have won, considering that it launched at $600 in 1996.
Wow.
Which I think would certainly have won this. Let me check the release dates on these. Yeah, so the reason this did come out after the PlayStation, so it is in the running. And you know what? I'm going to say, Wyatt, you have broken the list. You've discovered a console that is not on my list.
Your game cannot contain my galaxy brain, Ryan. Sorry.
The next most expensive thing is the PlayStation 3, the upper range model, which would right now be the equivalent of $715. At launch, it was $600.
Goodness.
So the PlayStation 3 was a big pricey box. And then, of course, there's the Xbox One and the Xbox One X, which are $500. So at least at launch. So those 2 are pretty expensive as well. But the
one of them
Bandai
is just
the Apple Bandai Pippin is what it's called, actually.
Yep.
Is the $600 in 1996. So adjusting that for inflation is quite a lot. It's very high.
I know a lot about weird, obscure game consoles for some reason.
Yeah, that's impressive. I'm surprised you managed to pull that out. All right. So that means we can now talk about the new console prices. We got some big news. Basically what happened, Xbox's prices got leaked. And then they later got confirmed by Xbox because what else is the response to that?
They did it in the best way possible. It was hilarious. They the prices were leaked, and then they had that on like I think it was on Twitter. Xbox had on their official Twitter.
Yeah,
it
what's
was
their
like
Twitter?
the meme of like the side glancing meme. What's that
The
called? I
puppet
don't know.
doing the side glance.
It was it
My
was
God.
hilarious. They
Yeah.
totally owned it, which is the right thing to do.
And the funny thing about that is it's clear that I think whoever was the PR guy found out that leak, posted that image, and then had to wait for clearance to actually announce it because there's a good like hour-long break between that tweet going out and then the next one confirming the Series X price, which
It was
I
all
thought
so
was
well
hilarious.
it was all so well timed. It almost makes me think that it was like
Corporations
I don't
memeing
think the leak was
properly.
intentional, but I think it was going to have been announced this week regardless.
right.
So the leak was probably like a day early, is my bet. Yeah, because that image was like a finished graphic that was sent to someone who leaked it.
That's what I'm saying.
yeah.
It's like it almost makes you feel like the leak was intentional.
I think it's. I don't think the leak itself was intentional.
I'm not saying that. I just thought like the timing is
Yeah,
perfect.
it was just very close.
You know what I mean?
Well, I think it's clearly someone got sent that leaked it. Like it's not. I don't think this is like corporate espionage or anything.
I'm usually it's funny because like I'm usually not a fan of things leaking. Like I usually want things
Yeah.
to be like announced and released the way that the artist whoever wants it to be. But in this case, they've held out the price for so long that it's like I'm
Enough
totally
already.
fine with it. Like yeah, it's been too long. Like this thing comes out November, right? Like it's
Yeah.
so soon at this point.
It's ridiculous. Like
yeah.
This is by far the latest in I think any console generation where we have not had the price until 2 months before release. Like
Why were they
it's
waiting
bonkers.
for the price for so long?
They're playing chicken with each other, right?
Oh.
They want to
Right.
see who's gonna go first so they can undercut the competition.
And
yeah.
I feel like part of it too is that because Microsoft botched their like reveal of the Xbox One so much, they probably wanted to like handle this with a lot more care than they did last time.
Absolutely.
So they're probably being just so careful, which is totally
It's because
understandable.
they know there's been backlash first against the reveal of the Xbox One. Now there was more backlash against the first like game showcase they did because they didn't show gameplay for pretty much anything. And then there was more backlash on the second show that Xbox did because nothing was really running on the Series X. It was all just footage of like mostly CG trailers, aside from the Medium, which had convincing gameplay, but everything else was pretty much trailer footage, which was a little bit disappointing after PlayStation had that whole like everything you're seeing is on the PS5 right now.
And then there's the Halo debacle.
Yeah,
well,
then the whole Halo
didn't help
debacle, which got
things.
much worse. You can follow the saga of that through the entire podcast.
Is that
record
the
on it every time.
infinite delay? Or
Yeah,
something?
Well,
infinite
the delay and also it's like graphical prowess, which was not super impressive to
Yeah.
say the least. And
There's, like,
also
a lot
there's
of
just
odd
been there's been a lot of talk of like 343 is an absolute like shit show at the moment as well. Like
Yeah.
allegedly, obviously we don't want to claim anything, but that's been
Yeah, absolutely. Like we don't have any insider information on this stuff. It's all just what the public knows, and the fact that we all have some background in game development, which helps us kind of predict a little bit of what's happening, but not much. Because every studio works differently, and 343 is one of the more closed-mouth ones. A lot of the console-based development studios tend to be pretty closed off, at least to the general public. So it's hard to know exactly what's going on. But we do know 343 has been handling the MCC pretty well. The Master Chief Collection just keeps getting better. They're adding crossplay.
We were absolutely praising it, last episode. It's great. It's great value.
Yeah, it's impressive. I think 343's gotten a lot of goodwill from it, especially considering like the state of launch and what it is now are basically two entirely different experiences.
That's one thing I've always said is that like 343, like their games tend to launch in a very rocky state. But
Yeah,
they're one of the few AAA developers that really like sticks with a product, and like
and like that doesn't excuse the rocky state of launch.
No.
But it does mean the game is worth playing once it's out of that state.
Yeah, I'm glad they're doing it at all. It shouldn't be this way, but I'm glad that they're doing it.
Yeah,
in the first
and
place.
I have a suspicion that part of the infinite delay is to not have that situation. I'm betting that's a decent portion of it because they know if Infinite launches poorly, they are going to lose a lot of goodwill and like fan base.
And while we're on the subject, I don't think we've talked about this yet, but this is kind of old news, but we kept just, we were talking about other things for the last several episodes. But Joseph Staten, the writer and an ex-Bungie developer, is back to see development through to the end, which at first I was very excited about. But then, upon further inspection, I think to myself, what other game was a mess in terms of development, and they brought back a very well-known figure from the studio that had left to try and quote unquote finish the project? Does anyone know?
I know what you're gonna. Yeah.
Anthem brought back Casey Hudson in the last couple months of development, which was supposed to be a good sign, and people are like, "Oh, well, Casey Hudson's back. He was in charge of Mass Effect, and I think parts of Dragon Age. I think Mass Effect was more his baby.
He had hands in a bunch of stuff.
But yeah, no, he was very important to BioWare. He had left, and then he had come back to finish development, which was supposed to be a good sign. But the game still came out. It was still Anthem, so it seemed like maybe his input wasn't. Maybe it was too late. So this feels very similar to that, which is why I'm concerned.
Yeah, and I think one other thing to mention about that, because I don't believe we talked about it, because there was a lot that happened the last 2 weeks, so we had a lot of other things to talk about, but this was pretty recent. Staten is credited as the director of cinematics, which makes him sound like not that important. In reality, he did a lot more than that, because we ended up looking a lot into this, and he did basically most of the mission scripting, of the characters talking, and he basically had hands in everything narrative.
Not for Infinite?
Cinematics. No, not in Infinite. In all the other Halo games, we don't know. We don't know what is. We know his Infinite role, I think, is creative director, but we don't know what he's actually doing.
Well, yeah, I mean, he's one of the reasons Halo is what it is. I mean, that world wouldn't,
Yeah, but for people who don't know who he is, it's important to give that background that, he had hands in a lot of Halos. Like Halo 1 to 3, he was on all of them and did a lot of work on all 3 of them. Which is hopefully a good sign. The thing that concerns me is they're hiring a narrative person this late into it.
It makes me wonder. I mean, at this point, the narrative should be locked in.
Yeah,
I don't know what I don't know what else he'd be able to add,
unless they are going to go for that rumored games as a service angle and do the story over the course of a year.
And do we know? I don't think there
are enough games like that, in my opinion.
Yeah, I don't know. I certainly don't want Halo to be that.
Yeah, and I don't know if this was ever clarified, but they 343 had said he's coming to help, finish development. But is he staying afterwards? Is he going
we have no clue.
Stay and help with content post launch? Because that would be very exciting if he was able to take over the narrative.
The creative director, and that kind of title tends to be pretty important and not handed out willy nilly. So I would assume he's in it for at least some fashion of the long haul, so long as the game isn't a trash fire on launch. Which
but if that were true,
it probably isn't.
And that's correct. But if that were true, I would feel like they would have made that clear that he's staying for the long haul. Because all they've said is he's coming to help finish development. They haven't said whether he's.
I don't think that's
they may not know
of whether or not he is. I think it's more of this is the reason we're hiring him, and this is what's important to people right now. Is the state of the game.
I suppose, but I feel like it would have been important to say that as well, because I feel like that would have made people more excited if he was.
I feel like they might.
They made it clear.
Like maybe they're saving that announcement for after the game comes out.
I feel like it would have gotten more goodwill personally, but they may not know either. They may see.
But then again, that could also have been concerning for people, because that could be another pointer that they're doing some weird games as a service thing. And maybe
they've already said that they're doing that.
But we don't know if that's referring to how they're handling the narrative, or if that's just how they're handling multiplayer and seasons and whatnot.
That's true.
So I think the hope is definitely that the game will have a full campaign and everything on launch, and maybe that's part of why the delay happened, and maybe they wanted to revisit the idea of how they're presenting the game in the current landscape and all the backlash against certain games taking steps of removing content and all this crazy stuff with games as a service going on right now, with Marvel's Avengers being a little bit of a trash fire, but with a good core. It's just such an odd situation.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, and back to we were talking about console prices. I think the important thing to mention is that the Series X is $300 and plays next gen games, which is for the same price as Nintendo's. Series S, not X.
Oh,
$300 plays next gen games. That's pretty unbeatable, and I don't think the PS5 is going to come anywhere close to that. So, like, Microsoft has a good foot on a lot of the casual audience with that. I think that's certainly a great.
What do you mean by? Sorry to, I guess just
Yeah.
real or intro. So what do you mean by the PS5 not coming close to that? Was that in
in price?
Okay.
Yeah.
I was gonna say in the
PS5
aspects
is
of gameplay
competing with
going
the
on,
Series
or
X, and as of right now, it doesn't look that Sony has a competitor to the cheaper next gen model.
And unless the discless PS5 is cheaper than we're all expecting, which is probably not going to be, but
Yeah, and I feel like they run the risk of if the discless PS5 is too much cheaper, it's going to be a pretty heavy like goodwill hit with people that like discs and disc-based media, because like for me it's a situation of I don't tend to buy disc-based games, but I have tons of like Blu-ray movies and whatnot that I want to watch on my PS5.
I like physical copies of games sometimes, not even for just collector's edition, just like being able to
and
hold something, I guess.
Yeah, and it is important to point out that two things that you're missing with the Series S is it's all digital, so there's no
disc
drive whatsoever, and also there's only 512 gigabyte SSD.
Yes, but it will also support xCloud, which is another important mark.
That's true.
Which is essentially a cloud streaming service that will let you stream Game Pass games on your console.
I'm curious. Cool. So like let's say you're because like Call of Duty is 100 gigabytes minimum. Yeah. So you wouldn't be able to fit Call of Duty all on a Series S, right? So if you got a 1 terabyte SSD, to go along with your Series S, that would be an extra like $100 depending on
it depends
depending on where you get it from.
SSDs can be decently expensive,
and for something that's only for a storage device that's that small, I would really recommend at least bare minimum getting another 500 gigabyte drive, or if not, I would say 1 terabyte. So when you think about it, it's really,
or having really good Wi-Fi to download and delete games whenever you want to play them.
It's really 300. I would say
plus accessories,
plus $100 for another SSD. Because I would highly recommend that.
How much does a terabyte go for?
It depends. It varies pretty wildly based on.
It's usually around the $100 mark is like the bare minimum. Usually.
They're getting cheaper as time goes on, but COVID also kind of threw a bit of a wrench into that.
Yeah.
So prices do vary pretty heavily. Like I think last summer I got a 2 terabyte for about $100.
Ooh.
But that's still pretty rare to find now. So Series S is definitely a good entry point into next gen if you're concerned about the upfront cost. It'll be a great Game Pass box and xCloud box if you want to do the subscription services.
I like the design quite a bit, actually. I'm not a huge fan of white consoles. We've talked about that, but like I could see this like if this was like a black version of this
box.
Yeah.
And along with that,
a lot of people
go ahead.
A lot of people are kind of sick of just like a box under your TV. But to be honest, I've always been a fan of like super just minimal design for consoles, and this is exactly like up my alley. I love the look of it so much.
I mean, that's also why it's difficult for us to like judge console designs, because it's very subjective. Like some people will like the like curved look of the PS5, some people won't. Some people like the black box that you can just stick in a corner and forget about it, and some people won't. So I think it's definitely a thing to keep in mind is whatever your personal opinion is on the design. Although in the long run, that's one of the less important aspects of the consoles.
Right. I do. While we're on the subject, I do want to mention that. I mean, no one knows the exact dimensions yet, but there's a lot of information out there that makes it seem like the PS5 is going to be absolutely gigantic. Like
it looks big.
It looks like a freaking. It's humongous. Which will be, for something that's such a strange shape and not something you'll be able to stack other things on top of, that might be a problem for a lot of people.
That's a big concern for me, is that I'll probably have to stand it upright to fit it anywhere, and that also like just blocks off a bunch of space. So I feel like the space concern is more of a valid point, where like the nice thing about Xbox boxes is you can usually stack things on them or fit them nicely into a corner, and the PS5 just can't do that. Like there's no way to do that, which is actually pretty detrimental, I think, for a lot of people. But yeah, the funny thing, we found out that we actually saw the Xbox Series X about a month ago at the Microsoft showcase because Phil Spencer had it in his bookshelf during the showcase, and it was so small that no one thought anything of it. They thought it was maybe just like a speaker or something. Nope, it's the Xbox.
That's a good testament to being able to shove
Yeah.
it on your shelf and forget.
I mean, I
That's
think it'll
pretty
certainly
cool.
serve that purpose, and that's a hilarious thing to pull out after the fact. Like, wait a minute, what is this thing?
I really do feel like Phil Spencer has been such a positive force at Microsoft. I feel like
absolutely.
a lot of because over the years I really feel like Xbox has come around and become the most like consumer friendly console option out there. Like exclusives aside, because that's a different matter. I really feel like Xbox has come around in that area, and I feel like a lot of that comes from Phil Spencer. I really do feel like he's turned the image around and what Xbox is around. And I give him a lot of props for that.
Yeah.
Because it very much felt like a sinking ship for a long time.
Absolutely. And I think it does say a lot that it was nice to have like a person to look to as the Microsoft spokesperson.
Yeah. Not
Whereas
the
now it's a lot harder. Like Sony doesn't really have someone like that. They had Sean Layden, but he retired or left last year.
and there was what was his name? I don't think he works at Xbox. Don Matrick, like when the Xbox One came out, and it was supposed to be like always online.
Yeah.
They were like, well, what if you want to play your Xbox One offline? He's like, well, we have a great product for that. It's called Xbox 360. It's
just like that kind of response is just
like, screw
You're fired.
you, dude.
Maybe think a bit about what you're saying. It's the whole like, don't you guys have phones from the Diablo Immortal announcement? It's just have a bit of like audience knowledge before giving those kind of speeches. Yeah. I think that's a lot of the launch price discussion, at least for the Series S, which is super competitive. Like that's a really great price. The other thing with it is it does kind of mean if you have an Xbox One X right now, there likely isn't a real reason to upgrade immediately if you don't care about the super enhancements of the Series X. Because it'll be able to do all the same stuff, and the Series S does not have the same enhancements that the One X has. It might be getting its own form of enhancements later on, but if you want the Xbox One X enhancements, then you should keep your Xbox One X, essentially. That's how it's playing out right now. And then the Series X itself is going to be $500, $499, which is, I think, a good price and along the lines of what people were expecting. There were rumors for a while that it was going to be $600. And I'm glad those rumors were not true.
Yeah.
Because I think asking people to pay $600 for an entertainment console right now is a pretty hard sell. Yeah, because I think there was also people are using consoles more in the pandemic times, but it's also there's less disposable income because of people losing their jobs and like record unemployment rates. So yeah. What was that?
I will mention too. There's I believe it was like a GameSpot or an IGN article where they were looking at the specs for the One S, and they had made the assumption, or they had some kind of crazy claim that the Series S was faster than a PS5. I'm not a technically skilled person at all, but I find that very hard to believe.
Yeah, it's also like faster when you refer to any kind of computer can refer to so many different things.
Right.
And half of them, like, they're all good if they're fast, right? But like if my RAM is fast, that means things will load quickly, but it doesn't mean my loading times are better during like a loading screen. So
the other thing to keep in mind as well is like it's not just the pure specs that matter. Like it's very much how these systems are set up from a hardware perspective. Because like
absolutely,
you can look at a great example of that is take a Samsung, like the latest Samsung Android phone, compare that to an iPhone, and like pure specs to specs, they don't measure up at all. Like Samsung has a lot, they have a lot more power there, but the way that Apple kind of, it's their own closed off ecosystem, but that allows them to really tailor the software to the hardware, and you get a lot more performance out of it because of that. So that's something to consider as well.
Yeah, it's the whole, like, if you're playing things on your computer that were built by the company that made that computer, you're going to have a better experience generally.
Right.
Yeah, it's pretty simple, but I'm very curious to see how this console generation is going to turn out, especially because we still don't really have a response from PlayStation on this
yet. There is in 3 days.
We'll talk about that, but that 3-day
Okay.
thing, the thing they say that is mostly about games.
Okay.
So we don't actually know how much hardware talk is going to be in there, and they didn't make it sound like it would be much. So I think we're gonna have to wait and see. And we'll definitely be talking about that event next week. So definitely tune in if you want to hear our opinions on that. But that will be a next week thing because it's on Wednesday and this podcast releases on Tuesdays. So we can't time travel, at least not yet.
So close.
It was perfectly timed.
So close.
Perfectly timed.
Yeah, perfectly timed for us to have news for next week.
More content to look forward to.
Absolutely. I think, I think 500 is definitely a good price point for next gen, especially because it's super affordable, and we're getting to the point where it's incredibly difficult to make a computer that's on par with a console, including like a keyboard, mouse, and like the peripherals you need in the same price range. And I think that's what really is going to sell this to a lot of people, is PCs are still like better on the enthusiast end, but the enthusiast end of PCs is like $2,000. Right. So you need to
You make a good point.
It is very impressive that they were able to release a console that's significantly better than the Xbox One X for the same price. That's very impressive.
Yeah, it's also how hardware kind of... there's a lot of importance in hardware, but software improvements also make up a huge amount of the performance leaps of these things.
Of course.
Like, you can see games that run... Like, a good way to look at it is take a Warframe now and Warframe when it was released. Warframe, when it was released, looked a lot worse and ran a lot worse. Now it looks a lot better and runs a lot better even on the same hardware. It's because, like, over time, there are engines have new ways to handle things that are much less performance intensive. So you get the ability to make things look a lot better. Like, that's a huge thing with Unreal 5 coming out soon, is that Unreal Engine 5 has all these really awesome ways to handle stuff like particle effects and detail and textures that will really make
as
it
an
easy.
artist, seeing all those triangles in the cave. Ooh.
It's great, and it'll be like we can really push the boundaries of what hardware can do and also optimize it, so we're not having these huge frame rate drops when things happen.
But I bring that up specifically because it's, obviously comparing like a Series X to an original Xbox One, there's going to be an improvement. But I mean, when you think about it, the One X hasn't even been out for that long. It's been like what, 3 years, 2 years, something like that.
The One X I think has been like 2.5. I believe.
Yeah, but that's
what's
like
the average console lifespan? Or
average lifespan is pretty long, actually. It's usually around like 7 years.
Yeah.
Somewhere in that range. It varies wildly based on the console.
The original Xbox One came out in and the PS4 there's 2013. So yeah, it's been 7 years.
The One X is almost 3 years old. It's like 2 2/3 right now. But
even the leap in 2 or 3 years is pretty impressive, and being able to keep it at the same price.
Yeah. And for reference, the Xbox One X, I think they stopped producing them.
They did.
Yeah, they officially halted production, so you can't really buy them new. But you can get them for around $400, depending on where you're going. Up to $500, I think, which was the launch price. So they're in that relative price range of what the Series X will be. So if you are looking for a new thing, probably hold off until the Series X comes out. It's only 2 months away. And you'll get all those sweet, sweet next-gen enhancements. Okay. So along with some more... actually, we should talk a bit about our expectations for the PS5 launch, I think. Because the thing that's really interesting to me is that the PS5 had a bunch of rumors that it was going to be more expensive than the One X. And having seen a lot of the stuff coming out of PS5 news, it looks like the PS5 on base specs level does not look as impressive, aside from their unique way of handling their SSD. Like, they have a really unique approach to how that onboard storage is handled, where it should be like blazing fast on a degree that's pretty ridiculous, which is why when they show stuff like Ratchet and Clank, there's basically no loading screens in the game at all, which is pretty cool. But I'm curious to see what that price is going to be, because I think Sony might end up hurting if they were expecting Microsoft to launch their console at $600 and planned for that price of hardware, when Microsoft then launches at $500 and they have to either take like a $100 loss or basically lose a lot of customer goodwill. So I'm curious to see what that'll be like.
It's kind of it's kind of a gutsy move on PlayStation's part because, like you said, spec to spec, it seems, and we don't know for sure, but it seems less powerful. But it feels like they're really banking on that the way that they're optimizing that SSD. And if that's
Absolutely.
something that, but if that's something that maybe doesn't pan out the way that they wanted it to, because I know that the PS3 had this crazy complex cell architecture where it made it actually considerably more powerful than an Xbox 360 back in the day. But developers just
Yeah, but
had
it made
no
it super
idea.
hard to develop on, and you can't basically port anything that was built specifically for the PS3 to anything else.
Yeah. This seems that this seems different, but if that SSD aspect of it doesn't really pan out the way that people are expecting it to, or the way that PlayStation hopes it will, that could be really dangerous for them.
Yeah. I'm curious how that will turn out, and we'll see. Because as of right now, we really don't have a lot of information on the PS5 aside from what it looks like. Yeah, that's the case of that. So tune in on Wednesday, hopefully, and we'll maybe learn something. We still don't know. I think that's the most frustrating thing about Sony is we have so little information and no clue when that information might maybe be coming out.
There's no reason for them to hold back at this point.
Oh, and also, obvious thing we haven't mentioned yet, Xbox One X launches and Series X launch on November 10th. So we knew it would be November that the launches would happen. So now we have an exact date, November 10th, and a lot of the launch titles like Valhalla and whatnot have moved their dates up to match that.
You can usually get a good, like, when there's new consoles on the horizon, but you don't know the release date. Games that are claiming to launch on those systems usually launch around the same time, so you can usually get a fairly good idea of when.
It's usually November as well because November is peak pre-holiday.
Oh yeah,
so
Black
people
Friday.
order tons of them for Christmas presents.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So hopefully we will learn more about the PS5 soon. And as of right now, I think the Xbox One X, if you're a big fan of Xbox stuff, is looking great. So yeah, I think you'll be pretty happy with how that's turning out. Okay, so we got some other stuff to talk about. We got a lot of news this week, a lot of small news, a lot of big news. But let's just go down the line. We're going to talk about the Ubisoft Forward. We're going to leave that towards the back end, I think, to have a nice little capstone for these discussions. And one thing that is related to Ubisoft, but that it was not in their Forward, Skull and Bones has kind of been pseudo-delayed again. I don't think this game ever really had a launch date, so it's hard to call it a delay, but essentially they've confirmed...
Sea of Thieves type game?
Yes, they've confirmed that Skull and Bones is taking a different direction now than what it originally was. It's like a new vision.
It seemed like, because I don't know a lot of information about it, it seems like it was kind of an answer to people who wanted more Black Flag. And so it seemed like a very
it was originally planned to use a combat system very familiar to Black Flag, and you wouldn't have your own character. You were basically playing as the ship. Mm-hmm. Which I'm down for. I know a lot of people with I think with the success of Sea of Thieves has kind of shown them that maybe it would be better to go for a more cooperative angle or having something like a first person or third person exploration aspect to it. Because as I think a lot of people have accurately stated, Black Flag's mechanics for sailing work so well because they're not the main mechanic. They're just like a really well fleshed out side mechanic to an already solid foundation of an Assassin's Creed game. So it's not like you're expecting the entire game to be that sailing, and it's just really fun when you do it because of how unique it was.
It's very questionable if it's something that can hold an entire game on its own.
Absolutely.
Without some obvious, reworks and
especially with the style that Skull and Bones seem to be going for of this weird PvP-esque thing that we just never really got confirmation of what it actually would be. Yeah, it's a bit of an odd situation. I hope Skull and Bones is good because we played a bit of Sea of Thieves this week. It was really fun. So I would like more games in that space, especially if they're doing something different.
It's definitely the game that's had a No Man's Sky style redemption, but it hasn't been publicized.
I would love if it's a take on Sea of Thieves, but doable solo. Right? Like, Sea of Thieves is just super hard to play solo, and I think having something with less of a barrier to entry would definitely be a cool competitor to have in that space.
Right.
That's because it would appeal to a different audience as well, which I think would help give it some breathing room in an already pretty crowded market. Yeah. Right. We got teasers about some more Super Monkey Ball stuff. hopefully remakes of the good games in the series and not Banana Blitz, because that's what we got. Yeah, there's been teases of Super Monkey Ball news. We don't really have any more information on that yet. Hopefully we will soon. Yeah, Monkey Ball's not dead, which is really cool. Okay, so some cool new DLC for Borderlands 3 coming out. I think if you're into Borderlands 3, you'll probably know, and there's more DLC coming. So
I haven't played any of the DLC. I heard the Hammerlock's Wedding DLC. I heard was great.
Yeah, I
like even the writing. I heard even the writing was a lot better than the base game, which is what really interests me.
I think a lot of the concern is that no spoilers, but they handle a character from Borderlands 2 very poorly in Borderlands 3. And that character had a lot of implications for other characters from Borderlands 2, like Krieg. So I think the Krieg DLC is either launching very soon or has already come out. And that will hopefully answer some of those questions left over from that. So yeah, if you're into Borderlands, definitely check that out. We got announcement that Hades, the roguelike by Supergiant who did Bastion, which is launching on Switch because of some like delays in development. They are delaying the cross-save aspect of it, but not the launch. So it will launch on Switch at the same time it was planned to, but it will not have cross-save with PC at launch. Which is a little sad because that was like a huge feature they announced in that trailer. But yeah,
it's still coming, thank God.
Still coming, and hopefully they do a nice way of handling how to like merge your progress between the two. Yeah. So, and then PlayStation 5 showcase for next Wednesday. We already talked about that. We do have some sad PlayStation 5 news. Kena Bridge of Spirits is not launching this holiday. It's been delayed. But I think that's pretty understandable given the state of things and the fact that Ember Lab, who's developing it, is a very small studio for what they're putting out. Yeah.
I think it was definitely my like game of show when it was
absolutely. It looked great.
I loved it instantly.
Yeah. Okay, so a few more things. GameStop is planning to close another 450 stores.
It's still open. I don't even know how.
It's becoming Circuit City and Blockbuster.
Yeah.
Oh dear.
It to me it's like sad in a way, but at the same time, like I really hope GameStop losing market share leads to a resurgence of like family-owned game stores.
Oh yeah.
Because I gotta say, like I always have a better experience going in family-owned stuff, and there's still a lot of them, especially in places like the South where family-owned business is a little bit more emphasized. They're usually really, really cool and nice places to stop in because everyone like you can tell who they care about video games, and they do like cool displays that GameStop just doesn't do. Yeah, so I hope we do get like a resurgence of family-owned stuff. And it will be sad if GameStop goes and there's nothing else to replace that. Because I think like physical media is such an important aspect of games and like any industry.
Amazon will take over some more.
Absolutely, and like it's already happening because I had to order my copy of Super Mario All Stars through Amazon because like where am I gonna go to a GameStop right now and do that? It's not possible. So
I've just been getting everything digital recently. I'm not even taking that.
Yeah, I tend to do Nintendo stuff retains value, and it's the only way you're ever gonna get any kind of money back from Nintendo is if you get physical.
Right.
Because those games tend to never drop in price. Like I think someone did a look back and at all the Wii U titles that launched on Switch and like definitive editions, they're all still $60 for the Wii U.
Ooh.
They never dropped in price.
So, how does Nintendo do that?
Yeah, Nintendo is wild. Like, basically, the answer to Nintendo games is if you're interested in a Nintendo game, just get it, because it's probably not going on sale anytime soon for more than 10%.
Right.
Yeah. So that's our GameStop news of the day. Has anyone else find big news they want to talk about? I've got a few more things, but...
Deathloop was delayed, I think.
Oh, yeah, I don't think we mentioned that. That happened a few weeks ago. But I think it slid through in our discussions. But Deathloop was delayed to 2021.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. We do have major news from Nintendo. Breath of the Wild is getting a prequel.
Wait, is that the Breath of the Wild 2 game? Or is this
no. Breath of the Wild 2 is a new game by Nintendo, like mainline Nintendo and Monolith Soft, I think. The game we're getting is Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity, which is a sequel, not a sequel to Hyrule Warriors. That gives the wrong opinion. It is a prequel to Breath of the Wild. It's built using Breath of the Wild's engine, which is the thing that's like bonkers to me. Is that they're not using the Dynasty Warriors engines for this? They're using Breath of the Wild's engine. So that's super interesting. It's being developed by I think Koei Tecmo, but joint with Nintendo. Like Nintendo apparently has had like a 50% hand in this, which I think has done like all the story writing, which is something I think a lot of people are super excited about.
Interesting.
And basically, you play through the calamity of Breath of the Wild.
That's a great, a great,
and then
not
you
just
lose
having
at
like
the end.
because I feel like a traditional, well, I feel like a Breath of the Wild style of game for covering that bit of history doesn't work as well as
because of like how action heavy
game.
It's implied to be.
That was a great choice, definitely.
Yeah, it's super interesting. Like this is something people hear this and are like, wait, what? But
there goes my money.
A lot of people are really excited about this. It's coming in November, so soon.
They did one thing that excited me. They did mention that because like Breath of the Wild was so different from the other Zelda games, they didn't say anything specific, but they hinted at this Warriors game being very different from a traditional Warriors game.
Absolutely, and I think it being in the Breath of the Wild engine is proof of that.
Definitely.
And they showed a bunch of maps. It looks really good already. Like the maps they showed are super interesting. The idea that we can finally play as the champions and everything seems really cool. There were full cutscenes, there's voice acting, like all the stuff that made Breath of the Wild really fun is coming back, and we're getting more. So I think people that are into Breath of the Wild as a game, and especially the like Hyrule setting of Breath of the Wild, which I think is super interesting, we're gonna be getting a lot more, and it looks really good. That's the interesting thing about it, and especially I'm glad that Nintendo is doing this thing now of not telling us about games until 2 months before they launch. Because
you can't overhype them.
Yeah, you can't overhype them because people hear about it and are like, "Whoa, I want to get that."
And they also can't make promises they can't keep.
Exactly. You know? Like by the time they announce these, they're probably pretty certain they're going to announce, or they're going to be out when they're going to be out. Yeah, that's pretty major. Okay.
There are two things that I wanted to talk about.
Go ahead
briefly. The first being Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War had this big multiplayer reveal.
Yes.
As a fan of Modern Warfare, last year's Modern Warfare, I was actually far more excited than I thought I was going to be. They introduced and talked about a lot of things that I've been asking for a long time. For me, specifically, the highlight was the fact that kill streaks are no more. It is now score streak based, and what's better is that your score doesn't reset when you die. It actually carries over into your next life. So,
I mean, I can be good at games.
Well, that's the thing is that I don't understand how kill streaks has been in this series as long. I get that they're very fun and they're very rewarding, but it's such an obvious rich get richer style of it's such a system where it's just like it really complements people who are doing very well, and it tends to like if one team falls behind a little bit, that gap is made even greater once they start pulling out kill streaks.
It reversed snowballs.
It's such an old-fashioned system, and I'm so glad that they're not only reverting back to score streaks, which they've done before, but it's also something that's carried over. And so it's just a system that I feel like will make games a lot more closer, which is great. And the maps looked really interesting. They have this map where it's a bunch of like sinking battleships, and there's zip lines going across and stuff.
Yeah,
that was one thing that was really cool. Is that the locations are far more interesting. As much as I really liked Modern Warfare's map design, they were very just set in like ruined cities and just gray, whatever. Like they weren't very aesthetically interesting. They were well designed, but not interesting
for such a long time. It was Call of Duty map design.
Yeah.
Call of Duty map design never changes.
Well, I would say like the physical map design has changed a couple of times, because for the longest time we had this like very basic 3-lane kind of style, which I wasn't a fan of, and the design from last year was great. It's these like massive.
Oh, it's not still the 3-lane anymore?
No, it's quite the opposite. It's these like massive jungle gyms where you can climb and go into all sorts of buildings. Honestly, it's the reason I love Modern Warfare as much as I do, is I love the map design, and that was something that people really pushed back against. But that's a different episode for a different day. The thing is that like they have that kind of sunken ship map that I was talking about. They have one that's set in was it 60s or 70s Los Angeles? So there's a lot of like neon signs everywhere, and it's at night. It's gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous. Just all sorts of really cool stuff. I was way more excited for it than I thought I was going to be.
Yeah, it looked like a good way for me to get back into Call of Duty, or at least mainline Call of Duty, since I haven't really played since Black Ops 3, I think.
Yeah.
Which was a lot of fun, but it's been a while. And a lot of the stuff they've been doing hasn't been super attractive to me. So
I just hope they don't, because they got a lot of pushback for the way their maps were designed. And I personally think that I prefer this direction they're going in much better. And I really hope they retain that. And they don't listen to the fans in that regard, because I feel like reverting back to 3-lane crap would be a shame, definitely. So there was that. The other thing I want to talk about is CD Projekt Red has been under some fire recently. Because people have been talking about how there will be microtransactions in Cyberpunk, even though they said they wouldn't be. I want to clarify
only in multiplayer.
Here's the thing. Yeah. This is really bothering me, because first of all, they were very clear about this a while ago. They had announced this, like, we don't know if it's going to be an addition to the game, if it's going to be its own game, but they did say we're going to have a multiplayer component to Cyberpunk and it will be monetized.
So they did announce when the multiplayer was announced, they did announce it will be a separate game. It is not the same game as Cyberpunk.
Right.
It is set in the same setting, but it is not part of Cyberpunk 2077.
And they did say
it's not part of the main game.
That there would be microtransactions. This was a long time. I'm surprised this is coming up now, because they were very clear about this a while ago, and people were like, "Oh, they lied to us. They lied to." No. Cyberpunk 2077 will not have microtransactions in it. The multiplayer, expand alone or whatever it ends up being will have it, and we don't know what that is. If it's a free-to-play game or something like that.
I feel like the sounds of what they've said, it sounds like it will be its own separate, probably not full-price game.
Mm-hmm.
That will have
might even be free-to-play. We don't know. Yeah.
People just need to open their ears and stop looking for something to pitch a fit about.
And I mean, I do get where some of this is coming from, because it is a little bit confusing that they kept calling it Cyberpunk 2077 multiplayer. Because that does give you the impression that it's part of Cyberpunk 2077, even though they are very clear that it isn't. If you saw that tweet, I understand where people were confused.
But with something like that, you do need to look into it more. Because, I mean, again, they were very clear about this months ago. Way back.
Yeah, but and it's just, I think there is also the point that it was hard to find updated information about it. So when that tweet came out, it was pretty there was not a lot of information on the multiplayer, and most of the information was a solid few months old. So you might have been under the impression that maybe it was part of the main game now, or maybe the information is outdated. They did clarify it very quickly. Cyberpunk was on top of this, and we're like, yes, it is. This is a different game. It is not 2077's single player stuff. Is just not affected by this. And yeah, a lot of the outrage was over it being in the single player, which I think is just important because people didn't read the tweet. They didn't see that it said multiplayer. And I'm like, well,
and people were being vicious. They were like, oh, CD Projekt Red puts up this front of being so pro consumer, and then they pull this crest. Do your research. Just calm down and look at calm down. Really, that's all I'm saying.
And the same thing is also don't fall for pro-consumer stuff if it's just pro-consumer to try to get you to do something. I think all of us right now, even Xbox is being super pro-consumer right now. But if they then turn around and are like, okay, we're putting microtransactions and everything, being pro-consumer now does not excuse that.
No.
Right? It isn't a free pass to do something bad in the future, which I think is how a lot of companies see it.
No, and I understand that, but you have to, in the moment, it's important that we acknowledge.
Try to contain your outrage.
And also, again, we have so little information on this multiplayer component. Microtransactions can be done correctly. We see very few examples of it, but they can be done correctly with the right kind of game.
Yeah, especially if the game is free.
Yeah, and just based on CD Projekt Red's history, I'm not immediately concerned that microtransactions are in their game, because from everything that I've experienced from them over the years, they're probably going to do something that's very fair and that doesn't feel like it's gouging your pocket every 2 seconds.
But we'll have to wait and see. If they do something that isn't fair, that's when you can get mad. But
yes,
again, give it as constructive criticism. Don't just yell at CD Projekt that there are microtransactions, because that doesn't do anything. It's one of those classic if you want a game studio to change, give them ideas on
with your
how to
wallet.
change. Don't just be like, this is bad. Because saying this is bad is super unhelpful. And there are also
speaking
probably
with your
people
wallet
saying
is
it's
a
good.
very real
Exactly.
thing.
Like, if the microtransactions are things you don't like, don't buy them. And then they will probably get the message that people did not like that because they won't be making the money they thought they would.
They won't admit it, but there are people out there that will say, screw microtransactions, but they end up spending a lot on it anyway. They're out there, and look, it may be indicative of a problem and it may not be entirely their fault, but they're out there. And it's very important that we know, like what we're paying for, why we're paying for it, who's going to.
And I think it's also like it's fair to say if it is something you're super into and you have the disposable income, it's fine to be to like buy microtransactions for a game you love.
But you can also be that person
mind,
that's saying, screw microtransactions. You can't also be that person.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean?
Like, keep in mind that if you're getting mad about microtransactions and spending tons of money on them, you're contradicting
You're part of the
yourself.
problem. You're part of the problem.
Yeah. Okay. So that's our Cyberpunk talk. I do think the important thing to keep in mind with stuff like microtransactions is I think something a lot of devs forget about, and having just played Sea of Thieves, this kind of reminded me of this, is that to me at least, I don't know how it is for you guys, if there's a cosmetic thing that I get, and like Marvel's Avengers was the key thing for this that really hammered it home for me. If there's a cosmetic thing that you can only get by buying it with real money, to me it's just inherently devalued because it doesn't represent anything that I did in the game.
Yeah.
Right? And I think for a lot of people, it's that awesome experience of like playing Spider-Man is so fun because you do this cool challenge, and then you get enough stuff to finally unlock a new suit for Spidey. And you're like, yeah, I did that. I earned this. And it's a really cool sense of reward that you can then see while you're playing the game.
Perfect example. Ryan and I have been playing Remnant whenever we get the chance. Yeah. And there's a weapon that you get for beating a specific boss. And you can only get that weapon in the game by defeating that boss. So
and you also have to kill that boss in a specific way. It's
so
super cool.
So if you're carrying that weapon around, it says, yes, I killed the Undying God and I beat him and I was successful. And that tells you a little bit about the effort that went into getting that weapon in the first place. It's very rewarding.
And yeah, I do hope that games like Destiny start to adopt more.
Yeah.
Is that sense of like real reward, because I think Destiny right now goes a little too far into the you have to earn it category and makes you earn it through doing things that don't feel rewarding to do.
By the time you get that item, it doesn't feel like it was worth it anymore because the path
it doesn't matter if
fun.
the item is good or not, because what you had to do to get there was not fun. Like I can grind for something in Spider-Man because it's really fun, and I can grind for something in like if people like play World of Warcraft. I'm not a World of Warcraft person. I used to be. But people that are super into it, it's because they enjoy the game and they can like get this awesome item that's like, hey, I did this thing, like I did the raid, I got this cool sword, and that's something that's missing from a lot of games now, and I feel like that drives a lot of people away or doesn't keep them around. And yeah, I think it's more likely that people will spend money on your game if they're already endeared to it, rather than them feeling like the game is forcing them to pay money. Like a good example of Sea of Thieves. Sea of Thieves has tons of awesome cosmetics you can get just by playing, and they're all like for gold. But you can do, from my knowledge, I haven't played enough of it to know this, but I assume there are like challenges and specific tales and whatnot you can do to get specific items that are rewarding because like you did that thing. Like Wyatt was showing off his compass to me. There's an awesome compass.
There's this really incredible looking compass that you get for completing a specific tall tale, and especially since you one of the big parts of that game is like if you have something in your hands, you can show it to others to try and communicate with them. It's a really good way of saying, hey, I did this tall tale, I got this thing from it, and now part of the effort that I've put into this game and what I got and what I went through to get this item. So, yeah.
It's just a really cool reward system that I think so many people are falling short on. So yeah. That's most of that talk. That covered a lot of our news. We have a little over half an hour left in the show, so we're gonna talk about the last few bit of headlines we have, and then go directly to the Ubisoft forward because there's still a bunch of stuff to talk about there. A lot of it's not incredibly important, but some of it I think like Immortals really stood out. Okay, quick notice: Game Pass for PC is increasing its price soon. And this was a price increase that was announced a long time ago. Until now, Xbox Game Pass on PC has been the beta price of $5 a month. It's going to $10 as soon as it upgrades. Essentially, I think it's the end of this month. And important note, it's also getting EA Play So if you have Game Pass, you will now also have EA Play, which gives you access to tons of really cool games from EA.
It's perfectly timed because there's probably would have been people. It's like, oh, I've enjoyed this, but $10 is too much. Now it's perfect timing where now they're adding an entire other service full of games to it to justify an extra $5. And I would even say at $10, it's still worth it. Like $5 is a steal, $10 is still a good deal, definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, you'll get access to just games like Mass Effect, Sims, Battlefield 5. And you get 10-hour trials on a lot of new EA releases, so it saves you money if you want to try a game out. Yeah, it's just a nice thing. EA Play, the one important thing about this EA Play update, we don't know what version of EA Play this is. So EA Play on Origin gives you access to around, like, I think 200 games. It's most of of EA's older catalog, and like by older I mean few months old. It gets a lot of new stuff constantly. But on Steam, EA Play is only about like 50 games, I think, because it's limited to the games that are available there. So we really don't know if this is going to be like, maybe it ties in with your Origin account and gives it to you there, or maybe it's they just put on the specific Steam games to Game Pass. We really don't know, and that I think will affect the value of this to a lot of people. Is like what games you're going to be getting from this version of EA Play.
What I don't know is because there's different tiers of Game Pass. Is this available to like the most basic tier, or is this more of like the Game Pass Ultimate?
So this is available to Game Pass PC and Game Pass Ultimate. It's not available to the base console version.
But if you have the base PC version, then you're fine.
Yes. It's because I think the PC version has less games overall from Game Pass, because like they don't have as much control over devs as they do on the Xbox.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, there's less games overall on PC, and I think without doing this, the price increase would be really hard to justify. But with doing it, it's a lot better. Yeah. Okay. So there's much more rumors that Nintendo will have a new Switch out. The thing with these rumors is we've had them for like 2 years and nothing's happened. So. We really don't know when that'll be.
I would love a more powerful Switch. To be honest,
essentially a more powerful Switch. We don't know. For me, the Switch is still great. Like it holds up super well. It's not a graphics powerhouse, but if you want to play games portably, and like a ton of indies are really great on the Switch. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Switch is still great.
There's definitely games that I could get on PC and they would look better on PC, but they're
absolutely.
I feel like there's so many games where it's like, I want to have this with me wherever I go.
Dude, I played like Divinity Original Sin 2 on the Switch. I own it on PC too, but playing it on the Switch is a great experience because of how well it runs portably.
Yeah, for example, I have both Supergiant games on Switch because I feel like you're not missing. I mean, their games look gorgeous, but they're not like a technical powerhouse like giving off the best 3D graphics. So like a game like that, I feel like is the perfect place for the Switch because it's a game that you're not missing out on if you get it on another platform. You know what I mean? Like you're not missing a lot of the benefits that would come with playing it on PC. Definitely.
Yeah. We're getting a Fortnite edition Switch in Europe. This is a Europe exclusive, I believe, at least for now.
Surprised it took them this long.
Yeah, if you're into Fortnite and you want a Switch, you didn't have one already, you got a Fortnite edition Switch. I think it comes with some cool swag for Fortnite. So
there you go.
You're into that? It's coming. Ninja returned to Twitch. So if you like watching Ninja, he's on Twitch again. Razer has made some gaming gum.
What?
Gaming gum?
Yeah, I don't have any other news about that, but Razer is apparently making gaming gum.
Probably caffeinated or something.
Hold on. Wait.
I understand it's confusing, but it's pretty simple. They're making gaming gum.
Gum for gamers.
I feel like my brain is a Mac OS spinning beach ball right now. What?
Yeah. There's a cool detail in the Crysis remaster on PC. The highest graphic setting is called Can It Run Crysis, which is really just a fun thing. We had an update to the Epic and Apple case. Epic developer license was revoked, but all of Unreal stuff is still allowed. It's just Epic got the dev license revoked. Yeah, we expected that, and that's what Apple said they would do. So it happened. And Epic is still like updating with new arguments. Apple also did immediately after that say streaming services can have their games on our platform, but we have to approve every game individually, which is just obnoxious. And it means every game has to have an Apple Store listing, and every game has to have a developer relationship with Apple, which is basically a no. Because I don't think Game Pass is going to do that. I don't think devs want to do that. It's the kind of thing that I think is just like Apple is doing this because they have to offer it somehow, or else they will be seen as a monopoly. So they were like, sure,
they are still a monopoly. They just don't want to be seen as one.
They just don't want to be legally seen as one. EA put full screen ads in UFC.
Oh, come on!
They apologized for it and have pulled them, but for a little while there were full screen ads in UFC for it.
And it's important to know.
How can anyone make that decision?
No, but Alex, would it make you feel any better if I told you that they added this in an update 2 weeks after launch so that none of the reviewers would mention it in their review? Does that make it better?
Sounds EA. It's in the shame.
Yeah. And the last bit of like major-ish news we have for this past week is that most of the reviews for Marvel's Avengers have been updated from in progress to final scores. The game is sitting at a 68 on OpenCritic and a 43% recommended. That's really low for a AAA game. Like,
so it
really
tanked.
Low.
It absolutely tanked.
For example, Kingdom of Amalur Re-Reckoning, the remaster that basically changed nothing about the original game aside from fixing some bugs and like some numbers stuff, is at a 74.
Excuse me, Ryan, you forgot one important detail. It has an FOV slider in a third person.
Oh yeah, it does.
You forgot to mention that.
And I say that I love Kingdom of Amalur Re-Reckoning. It's one of my favorite RPGs.
So I'm planning on playing it at some point.
It's great.
Although they did the really scummy thing where the original is no longer available on Steam, and I always hate it.
The original also had a lot of bugs on PC too. Like it was, if you bought the original, there's a 50% chance it probably wouldn't run.
All right, but in general, I'm not a fan of that with any kind of remaster.
They did also do, if you own the original, you got a 50% discount on the remake that's stacked with the launch discount. So instead of paying $40, I was able to get it for $10.
That is pretty cool.
$15, I think. Yeah, great. Tony Hawk Pro Skater 1 and 2 is sitting at a 90 right now, for example. Like,
very nice.
This is a remake that's really good. So we have some high-scoring games, some low-scoring games. Yeah.
I would like to point out that I just tried looking up Marvel's Avengers on Metacritic, and Chrome just crashed.
Yeah. It's cursed.
They don't want you to see.
And I think an important note that it's basically universally agreed that the campaign is really fun for Avengers, but that the RPG systems, the looting, and all the gear and whatnot is just so worthless to the game as a whole that it shouldn't.
Oh, so the stuff that was shoved in there probably as a publisher decision and not a developer decision. Huh? That's weird.
Yeah,
it's almost as if they don't know how to make games, but actual people who do know how to make games do.
Which is weird because Crystal Dynamics is generally a pretty reputable studio, although this is like a jump from what they normally do. All right, so now we can move on to the Ubisoft Forward. Ubisoft Forward, as it would properly be said. We also got a message from, I think, I'm gonna butcher his name. I'm sorry, Yves Guimont.
I think it's Yves Guimont is
Yves Guimont sounds right.
Is how I've heard it. Right.
Yeah, so he made a statement about the reports of racism, sexual misconduct, and lack of diversity and inclusion. And they said they're at the start of a long journey and change is going to take time, but they are doing it. Which I think is backed up by all the stuff they've been doing recently of like cleaning house of employees that were problematic.
I feel like that's the right thing to say with a situation like this, because if you say, oh, we're going to be making changes immediately, this isn't going to happen anymore, it feels very disingenuous because, I mean, it's a correct statement. Like things like this, especially since the people involved are so deeply rooted in the way that Ubisoft functions, that it's going to take a while to get rid of those people and replace them because they're in such important roles.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, and he had like a 4-minute video going over the changes and whatnot. So it's clear they are taking steps. I think the thing that people are concerned about is it's pretty clear that like the leadership probably knew about this stuff and just couldn't justify making these changes until all the public outrage was there. So, all right, we're gonna go kind of in order. I believe this list is in order of the reveals. Actually, no, it's not. I take that back. This certainly isn't in order. But we're gonna go through all the reveals. We started off with Immortals: Phoenix Rising. We got to see what it actually looks like now. For those who don't remember, this is used to be known as Gods and Monsters, which I still think is a much better name. But yeah, you play as Phoenix, and you go through a bunch of Greek mythology worlds, doing cool stuff in a Breath of the Wild inspired action game. Looks really fun.
Which they've said, they've been very straightforward in saying that Breath of the Wild was a huge inspiration for it.
Yeah, and the game definitely looks like it has tons of differences though. Like the puzzles the puzzles here were less like physicsy like Breath of the Wild, and a lot more in depth like Darksiders style, which I'm super into. I've heard a lot of comparisons to the combat system here being like Darksiders 1, which is one of my favorite like Zelda like games. So I'm super excited to hopefully that is true and that's how it plays. Phoenix Rising is coming out on December 3rd.
It was interesting with this reveal because they didn't show any gameplay in the actual showcase, or not a lot.
They had didn't show any gameplay with UI. They showed some gameplay snippets, but
they had a very weird reveal in the sense that like the song was very out of place. It was like this weird pop song, and then it would be mixed with like normal video game score, and then back to the pop song again. It was very odd.
It was just such an odd decision for like how to handle the audio, because the visuals didn't match up. Like the music was almost comedic, or like not action heavy, but like summer blockbuster style music, like something I'd expect to see in like a Vin Diesel movie trailer in summer. Right?
That's a good way to put it. Yeah.
And here they had some like super serious moments. There was a point where you were like sneaking around and there was a giant dude that looked like he was about to eat you, and then suddenly it started like there was a screaming laugh, and I was like, what? It was a wild trailer.
The other thing to point out is after the WeForward came out, a bunch of YouTubers and critics in general were able to. Yeah. They've actually been playing this game way before this.
And they all got to play about 2 hours of it, which is a good amount. And they showed a solid like 15 minutes of gameplay afterwards of the show. And I gotta say, it looks good.
It looks, I want to say it's my like game of show, right? But I only say that because of the gameplay that I saw after, and it wasn't actually in the show.
Exactly, so like the stuff they showed afterwards was super convincing.
I almost feel like a better play for this is maybe have like a small trailer in the beginning, and then have some kind of montage of all of the people who had played it, who you'd sent copies to. I feel like that would have been a better play, to be honest with you, because everyone who's played it has been saying really great things about it.
Yeah, I've heard very little negative about this. The art style is brilliant. The worlds they showed look super cool. There's still things I'm not sold on. Like I mentioned, the UI is odd to me because it's almost there. It's almost great, but it's just like the colors are a little bit too saturated and bright that they draw your eye a bit too much. And the compass on the top is moved like just a little bit too far down, in that it was covering the head of one of the enemies the character was fighting the entire time they were fighting. And I was like, this seems like such an easy fix, because there's a solid like inch of space not used above that you could just slide it up a bit and it'd be out of the way. And I don't get why it wasn't.
This is a very subjective. I wasn't a huge fan of like the character models. They looked off. I don't know what it was. They just looked strange to me. I can't really.
They're almost like weirdly Disney Infinity-esque.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Like their proportions are just slightly off, and I think it's clearly part of the art style. But Breath of the Wild still had like realistic proportions for a few of the characters. Like some of the characters were super exaggerated, but Link himself had like pretty realistic proportions as a character, so it was pretty easy to like ground myself there. With this, I think Phoenix doesn't really have a normal stature. Like something just seems a little bit off about it.
One thing to point out too is that the game is very comedic, so I understand more why that song choice was made. It still didn't work for me,
the footage didn't match is the thing.
But one thing I'm excited for, and something that wasn't talked about in the reveal that much, was their choice of storytelling, because you basically have two Greek gods that are kind of going back and forth, and they have this kind of humorous rapport, and they have this thing where maybe I think it's Prometheus who's telling the story and Zeus is listening, right? And sometimes Zeus will get bored, so Prometheus will add more enemies into a combat environment to like interest Zeus.
Nice.
Which is I'm super jealous of, because that's something that my team and I are currently working on right now. So I'm super jealous, but that's besides the point. I'm not bothered by it at all. It's fine. Okay.
Wait, what was the game's name again?
Immortals: Phoenix Rising is what they've titled it. It used to
Bit
be
of a
Gods
bit
and
of a
Monsters.
mouthful. Bit of a mouthful.
Yeah, it's a title that I think is weirdly. It's just not great. It seems weird. It's also it almost seems like immediate sequel bait because Phoenix Rising kind of implies there's a next thing.
The sequel's probably like Phoenix Falling or something like that.
Probably not Phoenix Falling, but like Phoenix Rising is like the rise of
what I would do.
Phoenix
Immortals
Falling.
from the Ashes or something like that.
Yeah, something like that. It's Remnant 2. Yeah, the Immortals moniker is not I think the Immortals part is fine. It's just Phoenix Rising to me is such a weird subtitle. And Gods and Monsters gave a really good, like, it was very much an instant Greek vibe that I was super into.
I think Gods and Monsters is maybe a little bit generic.
It's absolutely generic, but I think this is more generic.
I definitely see the Disney Infinity-esque stuff going on.
The environments look gorgeous.
I think the important note is none of what we're saying is like a deal breaker for this game or even close to a deal breaker. It still looks great.
Of course not.
Hopefully, they showed some really cool gear sets. I hope that is all just stuff you unlock in the game and not microtransactions. Ubisoft, please.
Surprise!
It was also pointed out by multiple people who were playing the game ahead of time that there's no like loot grind or gear grind in a lot of. I'm so happy that it seems like
Shira based armor set.
It seems like Ubisoft games are really going away from that after, especially after something like Ghost Recon Breakpoint. I know that Watch Dogs Legion was supposed to have something like that, and they've removed it. Probably a lot of the reworks for this game had something to do with like removing a gear game, something like that. So I'm so happy that they're moving away from that. Definitely.
Yeah. All right. So moving past Immortals, we have a Prince of Persia: Sands of Time remake coming out.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if either of you have played this.
I've played a little bit of it.
Sands of Time is a fantastic game. It was one of my favorite games growing up.
Is that the one that was voiced by Nolan North?
I don't think so. I think that was the 2008 remake, which I've also played and had a lot of fun with. I could be wrong, though. It's entirely possible I'm wrong about that. Because I don't remember the voice actor, but that seems like it was to the 2008 one. But yeah, Sands of Time is like pretty commonly renowned as the best Prince of Persia game, and it's cool that we're getting a remake. The character models have been cited as being very rough around the edges so far, but the rest of the game looks great, and they have time. Like, this game's not coming out till January 21st, so they've got a few months left to iron things out.
I also thought it was a nice touch that this is a game being developed by Ubisoft India. So
yeah,
I think
absolutely.
that was they pointed that out, which was a good choice. I thought that was a really
which is great. Yeah,
nice touch, definitely.
I'm excited to see how this comes out. It does look like it'll probably be a pretty straight remake and not add a lot of unique new stuff or any unique new stuff, which is a little sad.
It feels like a lot of the changes are probably coming to the cutscenes.
Yeah, it seems like the cutscenes essentially are just being completely redone. Combat is going to be vastly improved from what they've said, but we don't know what that means yet. The camera will be modern.
They mentioned a lock-on.
Yeah,
always nice to see.
They're modernizing the camera, which is great. So yeah, well, we're getting that. We'll say more about this as it comes up because we don't have tons yet. It looked pretty good from what we saw, but it certainly did look less along the style like the Tony Hawk remakes and more of just a very straight remake of Sands of Time.
It definitely gives off a lower budget feel, and I wonder if that has something to do with. I think is it a new branch that's in India or something like that? I'm not sure, but I feel like.
I think the India branch used to mostly be like helping out with the other branches and not really their own thing.
Again, a lot of respect for allowing them to make a Sands of Time remake. I think that was a very good choice.
Yeah, if anyone's going to do it, I think give it to that studio. Absolutely. So yeah, I'm excited for that. I hope it's somewhere probably around like $40 would be my bet for that.
It is a little awkward that it's coming out in 2021, and I didn't see it being released for next gen systems. I'm pretty sure it's just a little awkward, but whatever. I don't really see that as being an issue.
Yeah, that is a little weird. Although it probably is just a situation of it's not really doing anything that would need the next gen, so you can just play your Xbox One or PlayStation 4 copy.
And with the way that backwards compatibility works, if you buy an Xbox One copy, it should right. It should.
I think for both
be playable
PS4 and Xbox One, it should be playable for both. Yeah. So that's the situation with that. We saw Scott Pilgrim coming back. The Scott Pilgrim game is returning.
This made me so happy, and not because I'm a huge fan of the game. I've actually never played the game, but I love the books. I love the movie, and by the time I realized that there was a Scott Pilgrim game, it was already
it was delisted.
It was delisted, so I've never been able to play it. And as such a huge fan of Scott Pilgrim, I'm so happy that I'm able to play it finally.
The thing I think a lot of people are hoping is it still has all the music intact, because it's been rumored that the music was likely the reason it got delisted.
Oh.
So hopefully they renegotiated licenses. This is again one of the most like renowned 2D brawlers out there. Which is great because Scott Pilgrim's kind of themed after that.
And if I definitely think it's wow, I had a thought and I completely lost the train on that one. But no, just if you're a huge Scott Pilgrim fan, it seems like it's very loyal and it's very fan servicey, which is obviously gonna please a lot of people, myself included.
And from my knowledge, it follows the comics a lot more accurately than the movie. So, good thing to look for if you're a fan of the comics.
Well, it's funny with the movie because it starts off as like almost a shot for shot, like panel per panel remake.
It changes pretty rapidly.
And it changes, which is really interesting, and I actually really liked that.
I think it's because the movie definitely there wasn't time.
Well, it outpaced the books. It outpaced the books. I mean, they had to finish the movie before the books are even finished.
Yeah.
And so the director was like, "I don't know, make it up as we go along."
Yeah, I mean, it worked. It was pretty cool. So that will be coming out in holiday season. We don't have an exact date yet. It's coming to Switch, Xbox One, PlayStation 4, PC, and Stadia. And it includes both the DLCs for the game with Knives Chow and Wallace Wells. So yeah,
I had a moment where I saw it. I had a moment where I saw it and I was like, like I actually kind of jumped in my seat a little bit. I was very happy.
Yeah. All right, we got a very simple announcement for Rainbow Six. It's coming to Siege is coming to next gen consoles. That's pretty much it. They're getting a season of content around Sam Fisher, which is a little sad because Sam Fisher needs another game. He's kind of been like sidelined for the past few years.
It's built up, but like we're built up now. You can announce it. It's fine.
Yeah, we're excited. We saw some more Watch Dogs Legion stuff. Rapper Stormzy will have his own content in the game called Follow My Enemies. If you're into that. All right, it was a pretty cool trailer for Watch Dogs. They did some cool stuff, mixing the music with how he's moving through the world. It was cool.
Nothing we haven't seen, but I want to play it.
It was a well executed trailer, so it did make me more excited for the game. Aiden Pierce will be back. He's coming back. But he's set to return as the first playable character in DLC expansion. So he is not in the base game. He's DLC. I feel it's a little weird.
He's such a boring character. I'm sorry. I love Watch Dogs 2, but Aiden Pierce in Watch Dogs 1 is so dull. I can't.
It might be cool to have him as like a more serious and like vigilante kind of side to what looks to be a lot more comedic in Legion of how they're handling things.
Which is how Watch Dogs 2 handled things.
So I feel like he might work better as like a foil to the rest of the game. Whereas in the first game, everything was just super like grim, dark, serious.
Perhaps. I definitely feel like Legion is striking because 2 did not take itself seriously at all. And even though the characters were paper thin, the fact that they were just cracking wise the entire time and nothing was really taken seriously, I thought was a better move. Because
it was a lot more fun.
It was a lot more fun. And like I liked the characters. I feel like I'm a sucker for characters that make intentionally bad jokes, and that was basically every character. Yeah. Like they had charisma, they had some personality to them, even if what they were saying wasn't the greatest written dialogue in the world. I certainly liked them more than Aiden, and I feel like Legion is definitely trying to strike a balance between 1 and 2's tone.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
I'll say that the thing with me for 2 is that it just never really struck a chord. Like there wasn't enough emotional weight behind the story for me. Whereas 1 had the emotional weight, but it never stopped, and it needed time to be like, well, okay, why do I need to care about Aiden? Like, what is
I
what is the reason I want him to succeed? And the game didn't really have anything for that.
I think with 2, like from a gameplay perspective, I kind of like definitely the story was not good, but I was like, I'm having so much fun with the gameplay, and I'm having so much fun with just these characters cracking
and that's why I'm excited for
stupid
Legion.
wise the entire time.
That's what they're going all in on. They're going all in on the zaniness of the characters. So
yeah,
I'm super in for that. We're getting a limited time turbo mode in Hyperscape. Yeah, it's
probably one of the more interesting battle royales I've played, but it's also a battle royale, so I don't play it very much.
Hyperscape is just coming out into the super saturated genre, and it also takes a lot of keys from arena FPSs, which are niche in general. So I don't know. I'm curious to see how well this game is actually doing. I want numbers, but we don't really have those, so we'll see. It's also got some like pretty aggressive monetization, which is a little sad to see from what is supposedly a beta. So yeah,
at least it's free.
Yeah, at least it's free. Then we got Riders Republic.
This felt like the most 90s thing I've ever seen
in
a long time. I gotta be honest, I wasn't super into it. I'm just not into like, sports games like this. It's not my thing, but I was very I loved how 90s everything was, and they were just 100% committed to that, and that was great.
So this is essentially it's made by the developers of Steep. It is a pseudo MMO approach, not fully. It's not committing to the MMO stuff, but it is essentially they're taking GPS data from actual national parks and slapping it together with 50 people in a race at once. And you have stuff from BMX wingsuits to skiing and snowboarding. So yeah, I'm super in for this just because like I'm weird in that I really like extreme sports games. I'm not a huge fan of regular sports games, but give me extreme sports or wrestling and I am in. I will play whatever it is. So yeah, I played a lot of Steep. I'm probably gonna play more Steep since this announcement kind of got me in the mood to play more Steep. So yeah, and I've been playing tons of Tony Hawk. Like I think people that love extreme sports games have kind of been in a bit of a rut for them recently because there's just not many. Ever since like MotorStorm kind of fell out, there's not really any good BMXing or biking games. Skateboarding has been out for a while until Tony Hawk's just came out and we're getting Skate 4, so...
Now, hold on, that's not entirely true. There was a BMX Monster Energy game.
That's like saying MX versus ATV gets a game every year. That is generally pretty mediocre.
I'm just saying, you have to be, I feel like your facts were off, and I just thought I should mention.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Its quality has nothing to do with this. I don't.
Oh yeah, nothing at all. Yeah, it's the summer sports themed extreme sports game. Woo. Apparently it's gonna have snowboarding too. I don't know what the source on this is, but it says it will have snowboarding, so it might have some winter stuff as well. But yeah, that's coming. If you're into extreme sports, Steep is out. It's pretty good. It goes on sale constantly, so it's good to see that they're doing more and that Ubisoft is actually getting into like a variety of different things. We have tons of different stuff coming from Ubisoft and not just that same formula they've been having for a while. All right, that's our news. That's most of the news. Any other words we want to talk about? Either of you two?
Run dry.
You've run dry. Great. That means we did our job for the most part. Oh, I'm sorry. We forgot to say No More Heroes 3 is delayed to 2021. That game that I don't think anyone thought was going to come out this year to begin with.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think that seems about it.
Okay. So I guess we could say Borat 2 is apparently been filmed already. So if you're a fan of Borat.
And hey, while we're talking about movies, if you're a fan of Mulan, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Don't watch it. It's not good.
It's not good?
Yeah, it's not good.
Oh, it's horrendous.
The
That's
new
what
one's
I've
not
heard.
good.
I'm not paying for it. I am not.
Because it's
I'm not paying
$30, and I am certainly not going to do that. Yeah.
No, thank you.
We got a Dune teaser. Dune is like related to video games in some ways because it's a lot of.
There was a text adventure of Dune, wasn't there?
I'm not excited for it as a Dune fan because I don't know the first thing about Dune. I'm a fan. I'm excited for this movie because I'm a huge Denis Villeneuve fan.
Yeah, and the trailer looked great. So
if there's anyone to tackle any sci-fi property, it's Denis Villeneuve. He's honestly, I don't think he's ever made a single bad movie.
Yeah,
I think they're all bangers. Quite honestly.
We got confirmation that Lords of the Fallen 2 is in development, but with its third developer. This game has bounced between 3 separate developers. If I can find the actual information on who made it. It's being developed now by a new studio called Hexworks.
I've never heard of them before.
Well, it's because they're new.
That would explain it.
It was originally developed by Deck 13, but yeah, they left the project in 2015 to work on The Surge. Defiant Studios took over the project after that, and then they scrapped the work that Deck 13 had done and started from scratch, and now apparently it's changed hands again. So that game is kind of in development hell right now, which is
usually not a good sign.
Like, Lords of the Fallen 1 wasn't that great.
Yeah, I don't remember a lot of people...
is getting so much focus.
Well, hey, you know, I feel like this could be a whole episode, but I feel like the games that most deserve sequels are ones that maybe didn't hit the mark the first time around. But
I think those are the games that most deserve remakes, but for sequels, it's like I feel like you need to hook people, right? Like,
or just a second chance as well.
Yeah, a second chance.
Like the games that deserves. I still think I even think to a certain degree like sequels.
I mean,
like and games that just don't. That didn't hit their stride the first time around, but with a second pass.
What was that, Alex?
I don't think really deserve sequels is the word that I'm looking for, but it's I have a vastly different outlook on games that end up getting sequels, like games that were good, and then sequels that are good as well, versus games that tease sequels and then they're just. And either that game was garbo or the sequel ends up completely not living up to things. Like, I mean, to my knowledge, I feel like I've played most of Horizon Zero Dawn. That didn't sequel bait.
Yeah.
I think.
I don't think.
And
I'm trying to remember.
I am so excited for Forbidden West.
Yeah, absolutely. We do have one thing. Super Mario 3D All-Stars basically instantly became the second best-selling game on Amazon of 2020.
Oh, wow.
So it's now like sold out pretty much everywhere, which I think is like, yeah, of course it's gonna happen with a Nintendo game that's a limited run. They're gonna sell out like instantly.
Nintendo has product shortages? Well, I've never heard of such a thing.
That is such a bizarre thing to say, Wyatt. I would never guess that.
They are so on top of physical releases for anything that they do. This is so unlike them. It's so bizarre.
Yeah. All right. We do have one interesting thing. Apparently, a Shenmue anime was announced. I don't know if you guys know what Shenmue is.
I do, but also kind of alongside that, there's a Dragon's Dogma anime on Netflix coming out. Apparently,
yeah, this week.
How is it? Is it handled by the same people who did Castlevania?
Yes.
Then I have hope.
Yeah.
Oh, but like, look, I love Dragon's Dogma, but like. Who? It's such a weird thing to do.
What you were talking about with sequels, they're given something that didn't get a great shake the first time.
Well, I know, but like usually, I don't hate that it exists or anything. It's just like usually when you take a property and turn it into like a TV show, it's something that's like big, like Castlevania is big, like Assassin's Creed is big, but Dragon's Dogma is just something that just kind of came out and
I think the weird thing is, like, as someone who loves Dragon's Dogma is not that compelling story-wise.
No, it's not.
There's interesting elements, but the game never fully realizes them. So what I hope is that the show is a way for the people behind it to really realize those ideas the game had and actually execute them really well.
if you think about it, it's actually taking games with like less of a story is a great way. You have a lot more freedom over what you want to do with the story.
Well, that's why the Castlevania remakes are themed after like 2 and 3, because 2 and 3 had so little going on outside of just like you're fighting Dracula.
Yeah.
So yeah, it gives them a lot of freedom. Yeah, that looks like everything. Unless I'm missing something glaring. I'm certain we missed some stuff the last 2 weeks. That's fine. A lot of it, we've gone over everything important.
It's whatever. It's fine.
There's been tons of like little stuff, but a lot of it is like industry things that really don't matter to anyone that isn't either making a game currently or a publisher. So yeah, there's tons of like TV related games news and like rumors, but none of those are really hard.
There were some Wukong some small Wukong details. I don't know if you heard about that.
There were some interviews and whatnot, but they basically were saying the same thing, that the game is like not far along.
Mm-hmm. But they did talk about their plans. Like they have like 2 other games in this. It's supposed to be this whole set up to this whole universe. They have like 2 more games planned, and they're hiring on a bunch of people, and they're being very humble about what it is, which I can appreciate.
Yeah, I'll be a lot more interested in Wukong once we have some more news on it actually not being a vertical slice anymore. Because as of right now, we know that trailer was basically a lot of smoke and mirrors. Like the developers have said, yeah, that trailer was a lot of smoke and mirrors to basically allow us to hire people that are interested in it.
That's so refreshing that they're just so upfront about it.
Yeah, they're very clear about what's going on.
It's great.
Which is great. It's just like, as someone who would want to play it, I want to wait for more information before I start judging things.
Of course.
We did miss one thing. 505 Games upgraded people to the Ultimate Edition of Control and then revoked it.
What?
I forget to talk about this. Yeah.
Which is hilarious, because the entire reason they were saying they couldn't do that is because they were saying we can't upgrade you to the Ultimate Edition. It's just not possible. And then they accidentally do it. Like, this is something straight out of like a sitcom plotline.
Which just makes it that much more clear that their upgrade is purely monetary purposes and not because they couldn't
Which is such a shame, because Control is a great game and it really doesn't deserve to be associated with this.
No, and I feel like I talked about this when we first mentioned this, but like I feel like Remedy is still getting a lot of shit for this, but it's really not their fault. This is a 100% a publisher decision.
This is a contractual obligation. And reality is, it probably isn't even the entirety of 505. It's likely the group assigned to overview and control for some reason decided this was a good way to handle it. So yeah, I don't get up in arms at everyone about this, but it is a really bad thing. And 505, I hope they reconsider this decision.
Yeah,
because they were losing lots of goodwill with this. Like
Control, that was one of the best games that came out that year.
But 505 is a pretty well-respected publisher, and this is losing them a lot.
Yep.
We did get some more stuff on a Bionicle fan game that a LEGO fan has been making for 6 years.
Oh.
They went into discussions with LEGO, and LEGO was like, they basically gave them the go-ahead. So long as they don't monetize it, they are clear to keep working and doing whatever they want with it. Which is super rare for fan games. Usually companies don't acknowledge them and especially like endorse them. LEGO basically was like, yeah, this is really cool. Keep making it, and so long as it's not monetized, we're cool. And that's like a super rare thing with fan games. Like usually, especially with anything Nintendo related, just gets shut down instantly. But
it would have been great if they had helped like fund the project a little bit, you know?
I think this also is like confirmation that they are not working on a Bionicle game. For anyone who wants to know if LEGO's working on a Bionicle game, is not happening.
Right.
Yeah. So, and the last, we do have some numbers on how much Epic Games is projected to lose. Or not lose, because they're not actively losing money, but the profit loss of the next month following their App Store account termination. 26 million.
Oh.
Because of this is the projected losses.
Wow.
So Epic was ready to take some hits for this, because that's a major amount of money. I mean, at the same time, like, you can think Epic is probably making close to that every month prior. So they're probably good for a while. But this is, if it continues, this is going to be a pretty big hit to Epic's finances. Because Apple playership was apparently down 60% pretty much instantly as soon as their account got terminated and the game was delisted. So, yeah, basically anyone on Apple can't update the game, and once the new season starts, they are basically locked out of the game or any of the new content. So, yeah. Wow. I think it's a shame because the new season is like Marvel's Avengers themed season that I'm sure is a big seller for people.
Yeah, and it looked like there was some different gameplay too. Like you would be playing against NPCs instead of people, which
and Fortnite
I
does
thought,
some really cool
that
seasons.
might bring me back to Fortnite.
Yeah, I think Fortnite is it's certainly not for me. Like I'm not the kind of person that enjoys battle royales in general. And Fortnite also has like the whole building element, which I love in like PvE stuff, but in PvP it just kind of bothers me.
It's annoying.
I thought I thought the original game for Fortnite was interesting before they had the battle royale.
The save the world mode. That looks so cool. I've never played it. I've always wanted to. It looks cool.
I had a lot of fun with it. It was fun, but it was pretty basic, and I think it's pretty clear that the battle royale is what's making them the money. So they're probably making the right decision by focusing on it. We're just not the audience for that. Yeah. We have Night City Wire episode 3 is this coming Friday. So that'll be at night that everyone can see. We'll likely be talking about that next week as well, so long as we get some real info there and it's not just like more music stuff, although the music stuff was really cool last time they talked about it. It's just
not knocking the music stuff at all. They gotta
it's just not really something we can talk about at length on the podcast. Star Wars Squadron went gold. That's pretty much it. Gears Tactics is coming console on November 10th. Yeah, that's the entire list. So with that, we can head directly to shoutouts and end off the night, morning, evening, afternoon, wherever you are when you're listening to this. I'm going to say, Wyatt, you go ahead. It's your turn.
So the shoutout deserves, it needs a bit of a story, but I shouted out a little while ago a video game composer named Sarah Schachner. She's done Anthem soundtrack, which is actually super, super cool if you listen to it separate from the game, especially Dawn's a great song. Call of Duty, a couple of other soundtracks. I learned recently in 2016, I believe it was Ted Cruz during his presidential run used a song of hers that he did not get that he did not ask for. He did not get the rights for. So she sued his entire department during his election. So that's my shout out because that's just such a great story.
Yeah. All right. I'll do mine now. My shout out's going to the fact that Tony Hawk Pro Skater 1 and 2 has secret levels and secret skaters. Oh, what? How I have missed games doing this.
It's pretty cool.
Oh, it's wonderful. It's just the ability to be like, once you finish the game, like suddenly, you have like 2 more levels to unlock and 2 skaters that are really cool. I'm like, yes, please.
Wow.
Let me do this. I unlocked the levels today. It was a lot of fun. Alex, what is your wonderful shout out?
Shout out to my if I have the case here somewhere, I'll say exactly what they are. No, never. Shout out to my Theraspex gamer goggles for helping me not get a headache during all my computer work today.
Yeah. All you need is some gamer gum, and you'll be good to go.
Yeah, I turn on Windows Night Mode basically all day, which just it's flux for PC. It just lets you lower the amount of blue light, which helps you sleep better if you use a computer a lot. It's nice. With that,
which we don't use them that much. But.
Oh, it's just we use them like 10 hours a day.
That's not a lot, is
it? Which means we can end off
bare minimum 12 hours of work time outside of classes.
Right about now.
Anyway,
I hope everyone is having a good day, good night, good evening, wherever you are, and we will see you next week.
Stay safe.
See ya.
And please, for the love of God, wear a mask.
You can breathe. We assure you, you can still breathe.